Hello and welcome to the CAPE podcast. CAPE standing for the Child Abuse Prevention and Education Podcast. My name is Kristi and I am an ex-West Australian police officer who spent 10 years with the police where I was trained as a specialist child interviewer and a child abuse detective. This podcast is all about sharing what I learnt, saw and knew whilst investigating child sexual abuse in the police force. It is also about sharing the knowledge that I gained in that time that helped me with my own parenting of my then 2-year-old daughter. My mission is to help share my knowledge and to help you in your role as parents to keep your kids safe, along with guest experts in the field of child abuse prevention and education, both in person and online. Thank you so much for joining in on the fight to prevent child sexual abuse. Your kids will thank you for it. Hello and welcome back to the Operation CAPE podcast, the Child Abuse Prevention and Education podcast. So today I am speaking with a good friend called Mike Dyson, or Mikey D as I like to call him. Mikey D and I met, funnily enough, on a fundraising walk or trek, if you want to call it, for 5 days with a wonderful not-for-profit called Zero to Hero, where I walked 135 kilometers from Cape to Cape, which is down near where I live. So from where did we start? We started in Augusta and we ended in Dunsborough, Yellinga. Cape Naturalist to Cape, from Cape, I can't even remember. You've done it so many times. You remember where it is. Cape Leeuwin to Cape Naturalist. It actually isn't that far away from me and I still can't remember. But otherwise, so that's how we met. And then since then, we've become friends and have also mentored on Zero to Hero Camp Hero and kept in touch. And Mikey D is an inspiration to me. He is a wonderful human. And I'm so thankful for him for being on my podcast today. So thank you, Mikey D.
Thanks for having me. Looking forward to having a good chat.
I know. And what we're going to talk about today is how to have good conversations with young people. But Mikey, you've got a really amazing history in this space. You didn't start out having these conversations with young people. You started out where? So let's explain how you went from where you started to now.
Yeah. So how long have you got? My backstory, I worked as a complementary medicine practitioner, as a traditional Chinese medicine practitioner for 15 years. So I spent a long time having conversations with people about, fertility, about mental health, about cancer, about, chronic pain, about all these kind of serious things. And over the course of 15 years in practice, I found myself getting increasingly frustrated about people not being proactive about their well-being, about their mental health, but about their physical health as well. And, not having these proactive conversations. And then I found myself on a hospital bed in the emergency department thinking I was having a heart attack. Whoa. Doctor leans over me, she says, "Nothing wrong with your heart, Mr. Dyson. You've got anxiety." And I was shocked. I was really smacked in the face by that, because I'd been exercising regularly, meditating regularly, eating healthy foods, doing all the right things. And it was a big realization that I'd gotten something a little bit wrong. Maybe I was one of those people who wasn't being proactive and preventative. And one of my clients suggested that I should join his local men's group. And so I just sat down in a backyard in Palmyra around a fire and just started having yarns about stuff that was going on in men's lives. And it was a fascinating experience, because I started to realize how many stories are going on in people's lives that they're not just talking about, particularly men. And it was a place where I could talk about my struggles, talk about my difficulties, talk about what I was hoping for, my hopes and dreams and ambitions, in a really different way. But the big thing that was life-changing for me through sitting with that group over a period of time was the level of accountability. That was a group where I could show up and people would say, "Oh, hey, Mikey, you said you were going to meditate every day last week. How did you go with it?" And not in an accusatory way or a nasty way, but like a really supportive form of accountability. And that changed my life. That helped me to step into a more embodied sense of well-being with just a stronger sense of connection in my life. I built some really strong relationships, and those skills, spread into other relationships in my life. So I started working with groups of men, with groups of boys. I got pulled into working with schools. Mostly what I do now is I have a program called Better Conversations with Young People, which teaches teachers how to have better conversations with young people about resilience, respect, consent, all of the good stuff. And a Better Conversations at Work program, which is teaching leaders the skills to create, healthier cultures in the workplace. But yeah, when you look at it from having a better conversation perspective, I've been having those deeper conversations since I started practicing in 2004 or whatever it was. And there's a real framework that I've developed for starting those conversations and creating the kind of relationship where conversations around online safety, around well-being, around consent, around respect, around boundaries, around my body, around my well-being can become normalized. Because I think there's a lot of people out there who want to have better conversations around that stuff, but those conversations still feel awkward and difficult and not normal for a lot of people.
Yeah, so true. I know personally, like, I don't have trouble talking about these things with my family, with people around me. You have to have there's a little bit of bravery involved with having those conversations.
Yep.
But it's like any type of muscle, the more you use it, the better you get at it.
Yep.
But I know that I do agree with you. Everyone is screaming out for better conversations, screaming out for more meaningful conversation. So what is this framework that you're talking about? How do you have better conversations with young people?
Yeah, and just to go back to your point, like, we're screaming out for those conversations. Like, how many parents out there want to have better conversations with their young people about online safety, about bullying, about their well-being, about relationships, about sex? The number of parents that want to have that conversation versus the number of parents who feel comfortable and are having those conversations on a regular basis. There's a big gap there. And I think, I've got a kind of a standard framework of 4 dot points, but before I get into that, I would just say, let's drop the idea that young people don't want to talk about this stuff. Young people actually do. They want the information. They want to be safe. They want to be able to engage with stuff online, and they want to have great personal relationships. Teenagers want to have great intimate relationships, great relationship with their boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever. And as they grow, they want to have great intimate relationships. And they need, more guidance than they're getting from in the current environment. They need more guidance than they're getting. And a lot of that, sadly, a lot of the guidance they're getting is online from unhealthy sources. So firstly, drop the idea that young people don't want to talk about important stuff, but they do. We just have to do the work ourselves as the adults in their lives to drop our own awkwardness and to lean into that awkwardness and to lean into that discomfort, because that's what creates the safety for it.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with like saying, oh, this is really awkward for me because my parents never talked to me about this stuff. Or, actually, I'm not quite sure how to answer that question, but, let's look into it together, sort of thing. There's no issue with having those, being real with your kids or with anyone and saying that. Yeah.
I'd say even more than there being no issue with it, I think it's actually a really good way in to say, I want to talk to something, talk with you about something really important. And I'm not really sure how to do it. And I feel like it might be tough for me, but I really want us to have this conversation.
Yeah.
I reckon you'll find immediately young people's ears will start to prick up. And the other thing I'd say is, talk soon, talk early, talk often. And, the earlier and the younger you can start with your kids with this stuff, the better. But also, it's never too late. There's conversations I wish I had with my kids earlier, and then I've sort of dropped them a bit later in their development, and I still think it's gone pretty well. So I've got 4 tips. I've got 4 guidelines for you.
Go for it.
Number 1 is carve out the time and space. And so if you want to have an important conversation, whether it's about, child protection, online safety, well-being, mental health, relationships, boyfriends and girlfriends, respecting consent, whatever it is, it's really difficult to have those conversations in a lot of different places. We've got to acknowledge that the reason these conversations aren't happening, because most of the time it doesn't feel normal. If we're going to create a bit of a different space for a bit of a different conversation, you've got to have a think, what is going to work for my kid or for my partner or for whoever else I'm going to have this conversation with. So, long drives can sometimes be really good. Carving out one-on-one time is really powerful as well. Rather than trying to have the conversation with 3 kids and your partner around the dinner table, take your eldest out for a burger and sit down next to them and have a chat, or take the dog for a walk and have a chat, or go and kick the footy or shoot some hoops, or take the netball down to the local court and, use that as a bit of an icebreaker. So how can you carve out the time and space, I think is number one. And, the obvious thing with that is like, let's put our phones away.
Yes.
I think as parents, I'll just talk from my own experience. As a parent, sometimes I'll say, put your phone away. I've got something important to say. Whereas it's very different for me to say, let's put our phones away. I want us to have a conversation.
Yes.
So, close the computer, turn the email machine off, put all of our phones away, turn the TV off and the Xbox and all of the things.
Yeah.
And even just as simple as saying, have you got a minute? I want to chat about something important.
Yeah.
And if they say no, it's like, cool, well, when's a good time? When can we carve out that sort of time? And sometimes it's as simple as saying, I've got something important to say. And that might be a way of carving out the time and space. That might be a way of saying, oh, I know when mum says she's got something important, or when dad says he's got something serious he wants to talk about, I know that we're kind of flicking a switch and going into a different conversation. So just, take a breath sometimes is a useful thing. How can we carve out the time and space?
I'm sure also, just to side note that, probably don't have those conversations when you're really wound up about something, or like, I have been, I will admit, put my hand up. I have done that where I'm like, right, there's something important to say, but right now I'm angry and I'm going to talk about it because I'm ready to talk about it. Like, I guess if you've got something really important to say, and it is important, like consent, sex, whatever, like, respect, healthy relationships, all of the topics that are really important, you want to come from a place of calm, so that we can all listen and hear what has to be said. And when you come from a place of like, right, you've been on that phone too much and like, let's talk. And, like that's going to obviously get your child or your partner or whoever you want to talk to wound up. So, I'm one of those people that seems to want to have really important conversations after I've riled everyone up. So yeah, don't do what I do.
Yeah, I'll often say create space for yourself before you try and create space for someone else, which is exactly what you just said. Like for me, I just take 3 slow breaths and I'm like, right, I want to have a conversation. Have you got a minute? And I find myself doing that as a force of habit now. I'll ring someone on the phone and go, hey, have you got 5 minutes? Have you got 10 minutes? Have you got 12 and a half minutes? Being really, this is what I want. This is the kind of conversation. So that's step one. How do we carve out the time and space on a regular basis? And like I said earlier, the younger you can start with, if you're talking about talking with young people, if your young person, if your child, son or daughter or whatever, knows that, when mum says to me, come and take the dog for a walk with me, I've got something important to say, then they know what that's all about. They're starting to get, this is a normal thing. Mum and I have a proper chat sometimes, and we have a way that we do it where I feel safe to have that conversation.
Well, that would have a flow-on effect in adulthood, right? Because, and I've seen this with my own family and my own relationships, because I've had those conversations throughout her childhood, throughout my marriage, everything, we don't feel scared to talk. We don't feel scared to bring tough subjects up. We, tough things. Yes. Okay. We might be a bit nervous about talking about something hard, but we've all created and cultivated this relationship where we do talk about this tough stuff. And, my daughter will ask, hey, can I have a chat? Can I talk to you about something? Or my husband will go, hey, we need to go for a walk. Can we have a talk? Or I'll say it, usually it's me because I'm the person who works in this space, but, they do it too. And that's, how beautiful is that? That's going to, if you think about your child from development, from baby, going through childhood, going through young peoplehood, that's a new word I'm going to make, and then becoming an adult, then becoming an adult in their own relationships. If it's normalized for them to speak up and talk and to have those conversations, and you've created that, then they're going to do it in their own relationships.
Yeah, it's about what you're talking about there is, carving out time and space by creating a relationship where this is something that we do. And, honest conversations about online safety, honest conversations about online habits, honest conversations about consent, relationship, sex, about financial well-being, about our physical health. our kids just need so many of these conversations with us. So the earlier we start, building that relationship where deeper conversations are normalized, just everyone wins from that. So step one, carve out the time and space. Step two, lead with honesty. And it's if we want to hear from young people what's going on for them, what websites are they going to, what kind of things are happening with their friends, who's got boyfriends and girlfriends at school, what's happening in the toilets at school, who's vaping, who isn't vaping. We're asking them for real honesty. And we can't expect other people to be really honest unless we lead with a certain degree of honesty ourselves. And so when I said before, sometimes carving out the time and space can be like, hey, I've got something important I want to talk about. That's leading with honesty. That's saying, hey, this is really important to me. I read this article in the news the other day. I went and saw this inspiring speaker, Kristi from talk at the local school, and it really stirred me up. And I really want to talk to you about it.
Yeah.
And your child or your partner will go, oh, this is really important to her. This is really important to him. I'm going to sit down and listen. You will notice the difference when you lead with a certain degree with honesty. People respond with a certain level of readiness. I often talk about how to have deeper conversations around the "Are you okay?" kind of topic.
Yeah.
And so, if you're worried about someone's well-being, sometimes saying, "Hey, I've noticed this and this, and I was a little bit concerned about it." Actually, leading with, "Oh, I'm worried about this," or if there's someone in your workplace that you want to have an "Are you okay?" conversation with, you could lead by saying, "Hey, have you got a minute to talk?" Yeah, cool. Because "Are you okay?" day is super important to me. I really want to check in with everyone today, as many people as I can, and to see how you're actually really going, because I really believe in this cause. How are you? So before you ask the question, lead with a bit of honesty, lead with a bit of vulnerability. And a big one here is talking about I statements. Rather than philosophizing and lecturing, rather than saying, have you got a moment? Yes, we need to talk about this because this is really important for you to understand. That's quite different to, have you got a minute? Yeah, I really want us to have a conversation about this because it's really important to me and I want you to understand where I'm at with it or whatever. So with honesty and leading from the I, that's point two for me.
Yeah, I've had conversations, and I worked in the police, and everyone knows that who listens to this podcast. But I would have conversations with other police officers where I had noticed changes in behavior, stuff wasn't right with them. Like I was in a high intense job for 10 years, and I would notice things, and I would, like you just said, hey, have you got a minute? Or we'd be in the car together driving to a job or just driving around. I'd say, hey, I've noticed this, and this. Is everything okay? And you wouldn't believe the amount of people who would almost their shoulders would relax because someone noticed that they weren't doing okay.
Yeah.
Or the fact that I would lead with that, hey, tell me if you don't want to talk about it. It's fine if you don't want to, but I have noticed this, and this, and I'm just checking in. And that, the fact that someone, and same with your teens or your young people, if you were to lead with, hey, I noticed you're a bit stressed right now, and you're upset when you get off your phone. Is everything going okay? Lead with something that's going to give them that you have noticed the behavior. Because if we go, like you said, hey, I've noticed that you're always on your phone, that change in tone. Well, and as my team would say, I've noticed you're always on your phone, so leave me alone.
Exactly. Yeah, leading with the level of you've care, like you've noticed is saying I care. I've noticed what's happening. So carve out the time and space. And you said something interesting there, like it's got to be okay for them not to talk. If you're saying, hey, is it okay for you to talk? You've got to genuinely be saying, if now is not an okay time, then we'll find another time to do it. So carve out the time and space, lead with honesty. Number two is listen with a real sense of genuine curiosity. Like zip the lips, notice the obstacles that come up, the need to fix, to rescue, to lecture, to tell them all the answers. Particularly
I feel like you're pointing at me right now because I get in trouble for rescuing and helping people all the time. Yeah, I know. It's really hard as a parent.
Oh, it's so hard as a parent. And, you're sitting in a group of parents who here has a tendency to want to fix problems for their kids and want to rescue them. Like 80%, 90% of the hands go up. We all feel protective over our kids, particularly on topics like the kind of topics we're talking about today. But I think sometimes our giving advice and giving them the solutions actually shuts down us being able to hear their experience. So for young people, or for any people to feel safe and encouraged to share, sometimes we just got to just zip it, leave a bit of empty space, get comfortable with a bit of awkward silence, not give our solutions, not give our advice, and give them a chance to sort of come up with their own solutions. Watch our tendency to judge, and just listen with a real genuine sense of curiosity. When I notice myself wanting to go, oh, well, that's not okay, and have you thought about it like this? Maybe I can switch and go, oh, do you think that's okay? Why do you think about it like that? And when we can lean into asking more and more questions from a sense of real genuine curiosity, because I can say, well, do you really think that's okay? Versus, oh, do you think that's okay? Those are two quite different questions. And when young people sense our genuine curiosity to want to understand where they're at, that's when they really start to open up. And they might not do this the first time you sit down with them for a chat. You might carve out some time and space, lead with honesty, zip your lips, and get nothing. But if you do it every Wednesday on the way home from soccer training, by week 7, week 8 of the season, if you've led with real genuine honesty, your kid might start to think, oh, when dad picks me up from soccer, he keeps telling me how tough his day was. Maybe I can actually share what went on with me and my friends at school. And so, zipping the lips, noticing those obstacles to listening, which is your rescuing, your fixing, your advising, your minimizing, it'll be okay type of thing. It's like, well, if they're upset about it, maybe it won't be okay. And maybe we need to get better at it not being okay. Notice those obstacles to listen, and get comfortable with awkward silence, and get good at asking questions from a real place of genuine curiosity, which is it's a tough one to learn, a skill to practice.
Yeah, I think it's really hard. Like, from my perspective, as I have done both sides of the story, like both sides of the coin, like that. Oh, it's going to be okay. And, did you really do it like that? And I've done it from the other side, where I've gone, that sounds real shit. Like, that sounds really tough. And you get much more a better outcome when you come from that other side, where and because I guess if someone came to me and asked me if I was okay, or if I wanted to talk, and then I said something, and then they said, oh, you know what, you'll be okay, like, it's going to be fine, I'd be like, I'm never talking to them again. They are bad listeners.
And that genuinely comes from a place of, I want them to be okay, and I trust in them, and I know that it will be okay. Oh, it's all going to be okay.
Yeah.
And they're like, hang on a sec, Mum, I just told you it's not okay. Why are you telling me that it's okay? So this really comes from, we create space for someone else by our own emotional labor. We've got to do the work to be able to sit with the discomfort of, like, wow, it's not really okay for this person right now, whether it's my daughter or my son, husband or my wife or whatever.
Or even your friends, your friends, because I mean, I've had conversations with friends where, like, my own issues been minimized, or maybe I've minimized theirs, and it doesn't feel okay when someone does that. So we do need to allow people to feel how they feel, even if it makes us feel uncomfortable, like you said.
Yep. Yeah, and there's plenty of practices out there to practice, plenty of opportunities to practice listening with genuine curiosity. Depending on when this podcast is released, there's a referendum happening in Australia, and people have strong opinions. How about trying to just listen to someone else with a genuine sense of curiosity to try and understand their perspective without trying to change their mind? There is, whichever way you're voting, just try and find out really genuinely why that person is voting the way that they're voting, or voted the way they voted, as an opportunity to practice some curiosity. I bet you what will happen is that you will strengthen your connection with that person and understand them on a deeper level.
Good point. Yeah.
There's a bit of homework for everyone. So what have I given you? 3 steps: carve out the time and space, lead with a real sense of honesty, listen with genuine curiosity. And number 4 is encourage, support, and follow up. And so, coming from the "are you okay" angle as well, like, our job is not to fix anyone. Our job as parents is not to have all of the answer when it comes to child safety, when it comes to respecting consent, when it comes to mental health and well-being. We can't have all the answers. I'm not a psychiatrist and a psychologist and a social worker and a counselor and a financial advisor and a parenting expert. I can't be all of those things rolled into one. And when we acknowledge that we don't have all the answers, we can encourage whoever we're talking to on whatever topic, we can encourage people to find the support, the information that we need. So if we're having a conversation about safety stuff, like, cool, I actually don't know the answer to that. Where do you reckon we can find out? So, step 4 is encourage action and follow it up. Encourage people to get the support they need, people to find the information they need, and make sure we don't leave those conversations hanging. If we're ready to have a deep, proper conversation around an incident that might have happened at school or whatever, make sure we check in on an ongoing basis. Or if you're checking in with a colleague about a joke they dropped in the lunchroom that wasn't funny, you might encourage them to learn more about it, or encourage them to apologize to someone, and then check in with them. Because checking in with a work colleague 3 days down the track actually takes the pressure off. Because if we've had a deep conversation about some inappropriate comment I made in the lunchroom, and then we just leave that conversation hanging, it can get awkward. Whereas if someone comes back to me and go, hey, how did you go with that conversation you had with Julie? I can go, yeah, I actually sent her an email and she received it really well. It wasn't perfect. I felt really awkward about it, but I'm glad I sent her the email to clarify what I meant by what I thought was funny at the time, So encourage support and follow it up afterwards. So if we're talking about something that they're struggling with, encourage them to get the support they need. If we're having a deeper conversation about trying to understand something like, child safety, encourage, like, where can we find out this information together? Let's be on the same team.
Yeah. And I think also one of the tools that I've used is to, like, okay, I don't personally know the answer to this, but hey, how about we go and find out the answer? Or how about I help you look it up? Or, I'll go and find out and I'll come back to you. Or if, say, for instance, as a parent, I let something go, or I didn't handle it well, I might come back the next day, or, when I was calmer, and said, hey, I didn't handle that very well yesterday. Like, you told me something really difficult and I didn't listen. I'm really sorry about that, like, and hey, do you want to talk about it better now? Because I'm here. I'm going to listen to you right now. And that's worked really well with my own team, with my own husband, when I haven't handled things the best. Because again, we got to remember we're humans.
You're leading with a level of honesty and humanizing yourself. And I think as kids, we tend to assume that our parents are just these kind of supreme beings who get everything right all the time. And if they didn't listen, it's because they hate us and they don't care about us, and all of that kind of stuff. And I think one of the most powerful things we can do as parents is to say, hey, I feel like I really stuffed that up yesterday. I'm really sorry that I responded in that way. Can you give me another chance? Because I'd really love to hear more about that thing that we were talking about, or what it is. It's not about how many mistakes you make as a parent. It's about, how you bounce back and how you sort of try to make amends and seek forgiveness from your kids for not getting things right. I think it's a powerful thing to do.
I mean, they can be the most they can be really judgy little people sometimes, but like, they do love us and they will forgive us. I mean, look at, I tend to reflect on my own relationships with my parents and adults that were in my life. And I forgave them for all of the things that they did. And so your kids will forgive you if you stuff it up. I think they'll come out of the experience with a lot less trauma and a lot less issues if you make that, try and make amends as soon as you realize that you did that. So I think that's I've come to the realization that there's no perfect parents. There's just doing your best.
Yeah, and if you want to lean into honest conversations with your kids on awkward and difficult topics, like, you're going to get it wrong. You're going to react to stuff. You're a human being. They're going to say stuff, and you're going to go, "That's not appropriate. That's not okay," or "I can't believe she said that to you," or you're going to respond not in a way that's not perfect. And I think you've got to be willing to stuff it up. You've got to be willing to make mistakes, and you've got to be willing to humanize yourself and to keep bouncing back and to keep leaning in. And every time you do that, I find it strengthens the ability, like you said, to build that relationship where proper conversations feel like a normal thing. And, I think it's worth acknowledging in the broader context. They're not, the 14-year-olds aren't going to school and having chats with their mates about, oh, how you been? Like, yeah, had this epic conversation with dad about porn yesterday. That's not happening at school. They're not watching Netflix shows called Great Chats with Mum. That's not a show. That's not a show, and no one would watch it. We've got to really work our way through the fact that in our world, these conversations with adults don't feel normal. And I think young people need more conversations than just with mum and dad. Like this whole idea of the nuclear family, it's a pretty small unit. Uncles, aunties, sports coaches, taekwondo instructors, whatever roles we find ourselves in as adults, if we've got young, apprentices in our workplaces, these are chances to be a stand-up adult in your community and lead some honest conversations with young people who desperately need better places to talk about all of the things.
Yeah, I agree. And I call them Maggie Dent calls them lighthouses, I think. And, whatever you are to a young person, whether I've had conversations with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of young people, from 3 into 18, and one of the things that I have always maintained is that honesty, that vulnerability, that listening, all of those things that you just pointed out, I have done with young people. And what that does is it does form, and I'm not their parent, so I'm not their safe, but being a safe person and being that lighthouse and being that one person, if you're a coach, if you're a caregiver or a teacher or something, because in my experience as a young person, I didn't have those safe people to talk to in my own home. And so I had them in my school. I had really amazing teachers, and some of them listened to me. Some of them gave me, and I really remember them with fondness. They were that lighthouse that I needed to get me through some rough patches. So you could be that to someone else who's not even your own child. So these skills work.
Or an art, piano teacher, or whatever you do in the outside world, drama teacher, or if you do footy coaching or whatever it might be, there's an opportunity for you to be that person. And I think that's a perfect thing to have.
100%. So did we get through all 4? Is that all 4 of them?
Those are my 4 tips. Carve out the time and space, lead with honesty, maybe even a bit of vulnerability, listen with a genuine sense of curiosity, and encourage action, follow up. You're not there to solve all the problems and to have all the answers. You're there to sort of encourage young people to find the information, to find the support that they need. As a side bonus tip, going through the side door, ask young people, so how are people in your year group going with alcohol? Is a much better question than, are you going to get drunk at this party? Like, who do you reckon will be drinking there? Who do you reckon is going to have a few drinks, and who do you reckon is at risk of having too many drinks and making some bad choices? And how can you have that person's back? Is a better conversation than, who's got boyfriends and girlfriends at school is much a better conversation starter than who do you like? You can work up to that question. But sometimes going through the side door by asking about how things are in general at the school is a really good place to start.
That's actually called one step removed. So
nice.
So it's got a coined term, but so when it comes to little kids, I say, use how could kids, or how could other kids, or how could your schoolmates handle this situation when you're talking about a scenario that you want to give them advice on, tricky people, tricky behaviors, etc. How can kids handle, like, if someone comes up to some kids in the park, how could they, what would you do? What could kids do? Or so it's not about the child themselves, like you said, the side door. It's about kids in general. So it's less scary, it's less confronting. They're more likely to talk about their friends than they are about themselves. I used to do all of that stuff when my daughter was younger, and I was like trying to find out who was sending nudes and all of that stuff.
So
very well done, Mikey. The
nice
side door is, I like that, the side door.
It's an easier way in.
It is an easier way in. And the thing is that I think, I don't know about your parents, Mikey, but my parents didn't have it. Once I hit a certain age, that was it. I was on my own. And a lot of us grew up that way. So this is a whole new way of parenting, changing the script and everything like that. So by having these tools, it will give us that little bit of framework guidelines to be able to have those good conversations.
My eldest is 21, and I just went out for brekkie with her this morning. Actually, had an amazing chat with her. She is not a talker. Like, people who know me know that I like having a yarn. She has never been one to have proper, honest, open conversations about anything. I took her out for brekkie this morning, and she just said, "Oh, this is what I'm thinking. This is where I'm going. This is what me and my boyfriend are doing." And I feel like years and years and years of hard work is finally paying off, that she's really open for a proper chat. You got to put in the yards. And if you do that, I think, in that stage now, as parenting sort of extends, I think young people are staying at home for longer, and you've got more time to support them, to help them to grow.
Oh, yeah. Totally. I was out the door at 15. I mean, not
Yeah.
like a lot of us we were gone at as soon as school finished. So yeah, our kids are going to be around a lot longer because of the situations we're in. Is there anything else you wanted to add to that? I mean, Mikey, you like you were explaining, you run you've got the social enterprise called the Good Blokes Co.
Yep.
And you run men's circles, you run young people leadership. You talk about your boys to men sort of that what's the word you use for that? Sorry, I can't remember.
Rites of passage camps for young men.
Yeah.
So
I love
I'm
that
not
stuff.
doing much of that. I'm not doing much of that anymore. Primarily what I do is better conversations with young people, helping teachers to have these kind of conversations and better conversations at work. So yeah, I still have Good Blokes Co, which is my social enterprise, which is basically empowering men to lead those kind of processes. So empowering men to run men's groups, to run father-son camps, to run rites of passage camp, whether they're teachers or coaches or facilitators or people in those kind of spaces. So I still do a bit of that through Good Blokes Co. I'm working with individual men who want to lead and drive better conversations around healthy masculinity. But primarily what I do now is work with school teachers. I have a program called Better Conversations with Young People, which teaches them how to make these kind of conversations really engaging. Like I said, young people are desperate for these conversations. And instead of teachers having to become experts in more and more content, let's actually shift the conversation towards them, and let's create spaces where young people can start to explore what safety looks like, and what resilience looks like, and what respects look like in my behavior, and what empathy feels like in my body. So giving teachers the skills to facilitate better conversations around well-being, rather than feeling like they have to be the experts and provide more information.
Oh, that would take so much pressure off. That would take so much pressure off teachers in that space, because like you said, and I don't think that teachers need more curriculum, and I don't think schools, there's so much, there's too much in it now. So one of the things that we have lost, and my daughter even makes this comment, and I'm sure you've heard it before, is that kids are losing the art of conversation because they are so used to being on their device and talking through a device, that when you get them in a room, they're too scared to talk to each other, or they won't even go somewhere where they have to talk to people. She's got a job, and one of the things that she's grateful for is I've always pushed her out into the workforce quickly. Like she wanted to get a job because she wanted money, but and so we need to have these conversations in a school setting.
Young people now need to develop the kind of, I call them human skills. Will just make them more and more and more employable. Like, yes, the STEM stuff is crucial, but if you've got two kids applying for a job and they've both got a 99 in their ATAR and high distinctions all the way through uni, are you going to hire the one with empathy and leadership skills and teamwork and social skills, and who's a good listener and a good speaker? I think it's a no-brainer. It's the human skills that will make our kids more employable, more promotable, and just to have a better, happier, healthier life. And
I mean, it's a community effort, right? It's not just schools, it's not just parents, it has to be all of us doing it together, because
totally 100%.
We like to, and my daughter's homeschooled at the moment, but she'll go back to school next year. But we like to say, oh, the schools don't do this, and then we hear, oh, the parents aren't doing this. No, it's all of us together. We're all in this together. So let's do it together.
School community is a great place to start. I think programs that I've seen that have brought parents into the school community to start having more of these conversations around adulthood and growing up. The schools love it because it's giving the parents, it's kind of handing responsibility back, And the parents love it because they're getting more of an insight, more of a chance to see what their cohort is looking like, and to give them a chance to connect with their kids better. So that's something I'm really passionate about as well, as like parent-child community events in schools as well. So
we're empowering people we're empowering them, or
I do
re-empowering.
I do a bit of work with schools in designing those kind of processes as well, to, like you said, hand the power back to parents, because I think parents are struggling. I think young people are struggling. I think parents are struggling. I think schools are just carrying the burden. I think one of the things they can do is invite parents back in and work out how we can share the load a bit better. Time for a bit more collaboration, I reckon.
100%. So, Mikey, one of the questions I ask all, and I didn't give you the forewarning, I usually forewarn all my guests. One of the questions I ask all of my podcast guests is, so when I was writing my book, I kept thinking, if parents knew what I knew, they would do things differently. So if parents knew something that you knew, what would you want them to know? What would they do differently?
Yeah, I think if parents knew that your young people are itching to talk to you, you might approach important and scary and difficult conversations differently. I would love all parents out there to know that your young people are actually desperate to talk. We just have to do like I said, do the emotional labor to make those conversations easier. We need to step through our own awkwardness and difficulty to create space for them to talk. And, got to show up consistently over time. But once we crack that seal open, we'll find we've given them a hell of a gift.
I've got one question for you, and I love what you just said, and I love everything about you, Mikey. I love you. But I've got a question. My teenager, so I joke about this on memes. I've got lots of memes about this, but so it'll be 3:00 in the afternoon. Hey, do you want, what's going on? Do you want to talk? No. 5:00, no. 7:00, no. 11:00 at night. Hey, I need to tell you all about my life. I'm like, oh my God, I'm trying to go to sleep right now. And you know, what is it about teens doing that to you? Like, honestly, I'm not expecting answers. I'm just like joking about this, because if anyone else listening
and it's so common. And so many of your parents listening out there will be having the exact same experience.
They're like, for goodness sakes.
Milo, I've got my pajamas on. I've read my book. I'm turning the lights out. And they come in and they're like, oh, I just wanted to chat with you about this. And look, I think as a parent, you just got to switch the lights back on and wake up and just be really present. I think you've got to lean into it. But, I think that is a classic indication that kids want to talk when the time and space is right. And the time and space for a lot of kids is after they've had a long period of time to debrief and to clear their head and to play some Candy Crush and, to clear out the stresses of the day. That to me is a kid who's finally regulated their nervous system and gotten to a place where they feel safe to talk. And so maybe creating the time and space for you is just waiting till you're ready for bed.
Well, no, I think you're onto something there, because so one of the things that I always say in my child abuse prevention and education talks and like awareness talks is that kids will not talk about anything that's worrying them. So they will not disclose abuse. They will not disclose issues. They will not talk to anyone until they feel safe. And I think you're right. I think it's not until they're in their bed and they're like, it's starting to, their nervous system's winding down, that's when it comes forward, and maybe they can't stop thinking about it. So they need to go and share it. And, shared problems are easier burdens, like when you share it with someone else, it's easier. So, you're right. It's probably got a lot to do with that.
Yeah, that's when your child feels safest enough, then that's the time. The other thing I'd add to it is safety and engagement. They've got to feel safe to talk, but they've also got to feel like it's kind of relevant for them. So if I want to have an important conversation with my kid about university choices and they're in year 9 and they don't want to talk about university choices, then that's hard. I've got to make it engaging and relevant for them, not just safe, but also engaging and relevant. And if I want to have a conversation about preventing child abuse, they might not feel like that's relevant for them. I've got to do the work to make it feel relevant for them. So there's the safety piece, and there's also the engagement piece as well. How can we make it how can we put it into their language and make sure it feels like a conversation that feels important for them too?
I feel like we could have a whole other conversation about this, because you just talking about that, Matt, brought so many like memories up about that engagement and safety. Like my daughter and I have had lots of great conversations, and one of the, like you said, one of the great places, and finishing up, is in the car. We always had great, when it's just the two of us, great conversations in the car. Great conversations, and I used to bring up really important topics when we were watching a show, and it, say for instance, Sex Education, the show on Netflix. Amazing show. Every parent, I sat down and watched it with my 12-year-old. People might think that, judge me for that, but do you know what? We had conversations around, masturbation, all of the sex topics, all of the consent, all of the things. And so when we were having those conversations, quite often we would pause, sitting next to each other, or I'd say, oh, if you were in that situation, or if your friends were in that situation, what do you think you would do? Or how would you help them out of that situation? Because again, like I said, with policing, we used to do scenario training all the time, and we would practice things that never happened, but we were practicing for it. It's no different. You're preparing your child for adulthood. So you need to have those conversations to prepare them for the world they're going to live in. And so by sitting with them, and something that's on TV, it's great. Radio, it's great. You can say, hey, what do you think you could do or would have done in that situation? It's a scenario. It's not real.
Yeah, you're using something that they're already engaged in. And, the other thing around, making these conversations engaging is going back to that curiosity piece. If you're genuinely asking them what they're interested in, what they want to talk about, well, that's a way to get engaging conversations. Like asking them what they think are the important things that we should be talking about, and going with, like I can remember when my daughter was in early high school, going into her room and watching makeup tutorials, and like I can think of roughly 10 million things I'd rather be doing than watching makeup tutorials. Like I'd rather be stabbing myself in the face with a fork, but that was what was engaging and relevant for her. And that led into conversations around, body image and all sorts of other stuff. So
I had the same thing where I sat and played probably 3 hours of Roblox.
Yeah.
And
I often say, you got to walk in their world before you ask them to walk in yours. You got to go where they want to go before you start to hit them up with some of the big topics.
Yeah. And it's tried and true, right? We know that these things work. Hence why we're telling parents to, try them, try it. You don't know if you don't try, and don't be scared to fail at it either, because, and show that you're failing. We don't have to be perfect.
Yeah. Totally.
Such a good conversation, Mikey D. So how can people find you? How can people find you if they want to find you?
Yeah, the best place to find me is by my website's mikedyson.com.au. I'm on the LinkedIn. I love having chats with people on LinkedIn. If there's men out there who are interested in leadership, Good Blokes Co. is my social enterprise. There's a website, goodblokes.co, or the Instagram on there. But if you got any questions around this stuff, I'm always up for a chat. So hit me up.
Yeah, and Dyson spelt like the vacuum cleaner, guys. And little side story.
Not like the boxer.
No, not like Tyson. Dyson is in the vacuum cleaner. A little side story for everyone listening. When I was on the Cape to Cape walk, and by the way, just so you know, I lost 5 toenails walking 135 kilometers in 5 days for charity. But anyways, Mikey D was there at the front of the pack leading the way, because he was leading the walk. And I think you told us a big old story about how you're related to Mr. Dyson, or that, have never got royalties. He's not related to the Dyson family of the Dyson vacuum cleaners, but yeah, it was quite funny. I believed you for a little while. I am blonde, so no, I blame that.
Same spelling.
All right. Well, thanks, Mikey. And for anyone, I really highly recommend that you follow Mike wherever you can and reach out to him, because he is a leader in this space, and whenever I'm in your world, Mikey, you make me feel so much better. So thank you so much for being you.
Thanks, Kristi. Thanks for chatting. This was really, really cool.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this podcast episode. Education empowers children and it empowers parents, and education prevents abuse. That is why I'm here, and that is why you are here. So thank you. If you want any further information or support, follow me on social media, either under Kristi McVie or Cape AU social media accounts. I'll put the links in the show notes. You can also purchase a signed copy of my book, Operation Kids Safe, via the website at www.cape-au.com. Also on my website is a free ebook titled 10 Tips to Keep Your Kids Safe from Abuse, and self-paced courses for parents to help you in your journey of child abuse prevention. Don't forget to join our free Facebook group called Operation Kids Safe Parenting Group. Please see the show notes for any extra information, links and help should you be looking for extra support. Thank you once again for giving a shit about preventing child sexual abuse. See you next time.